friends, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to day one of my 2023 holiday card series. Today I'm going to be making a card using Mama Elephant's Holly's Reindeer. So I've stamped those images out on some Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth Premium White cardstock with Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink, and I'll be coloring with my Copic markers. So I'm going to start by coloring these adorable little reindeer, and I decided to go with some E30s for them. I'm using E30, E31, E33, E35, and E37 for them. I am using 5 shades, but just the darkest 3 shades for the majority of their bodies. So I'm starting with that E37 and laying in some shadows down the back side of their body. I always like to keep the face nice and light so you can see those adorable features. And then I'm blending out that E37 with the E35. Then I'm coming in with the E33 and bringing that farther in on the face, right around the eyes and nose, and filling in all the rest of the body. I did leave a tiny sliver on this one guy's little paw there for the E31, but I colored in the rest of his body, and I think on most of them I just colored in completely with the E33. But then I'm going to add that E31 and E30 right around the eye and muzzle and also on the belly, leaving some white cardstock to show through for extra highlight. And I also did throw a little bit of those lightest 2 shades into the inner ear. And then I just smoothed out the edge of that E30 with the colorless blender. So I'm going to move on to my other reindeer, and I'm going to be coloring them exactly the same, only shifting the shadows depending on the direction that they are facing. So I know some of you might be surprised to see my holiday card series starting so early when we are just past mid-September, but I actually started this early last year as well, and it really worked out for me. Instead of feeling really rushed starting in October, I was able to add to the series at a little bit more of a leisurely pace, kind of mixing fall and Christmas at the beginning and then moving into Christmas cards once we get past Halloween, when things seem to really ramp up toward that holiday season. But I really liked that gentle progression last year. It just gave me more time to breathe and to think about the cards that I wanted to create, since I do create each card unique that I hand out for Christmas. And of course, I like to provide you all with as many ideas as I possibly can for your own holiday card making. So I hope you guys are here for it, but if not, you can always save this video for later and come back to it. I'll have an entire playlist, as I always do, of that year's holiday card series. So you can just click and file this one under Watch Later and come back to it when you're in more of a festive mood. No big deal, I totally get it. But I did also want to quickly mention that this video is in celebration with Mama Elephant's 11th anniversary. So we are actually doing a hop today if you are watching this video the day that it goes live. And it has so many talented designers in it. And Mama Elephant is giving away 5 gift cards to random winners. There's also a 10% off coupon code and a whole bunch of free gifts available with purchase. So you definitely want to go check out the new release. It's super adorable. And I am so grateful to Mama Elephant for including me in their anniversary hop. Once again, it is such a privilege. So I'm finishing off the last little reindeer that is going to be on the outside of the card. There's actually 5 reindeer in this stamp set, and the 5th one we will put on the inside of the card. I think these guys are so super cute. They're illustrated by Ada Zamora, whose illustrations I just adore. She's so super talented. And I just love this set. I just fell in love the second that I saw it. So just like with the others, I'm leaving a little white space around that muzzle, letting that fade into the white, and doing the same on the belly and the inner parts of the ears. And if the color gets a little bit too intense, then I just push it back with my colorless blender and reshape that a bit. This one got a little bit wonky, so I just went back in and corrected that by going back and forth with that colorless blender, pushing it back into a shape that I wanted, and then filling back in with the E30. And then I brought in R20 to give them all some rosy cheeks, and I went ahead and threw a little bit of that into the insides of the ears as well, although it was a little bit intense for the inside of the ears, so I am going to add in the R01 to just help that fade toward the edges, and again I left some white space on the tips. And then I'm going to go back to my E30 because I forgot to color in their tails while I had that out. And then I'm going to move on to their antlers. I decided to go with darker antlers this time. Sometimes I do the antlers lighter than the fur, but in pictures of reindeer, their antlers are usually darker. So I started with E55 and E57, but there wasn't enough contrast there for me. I felt like it was just a little bit too similar to the fur, and I wanted it to be more intense. So I added in E59, which is quite dark, and then blended it out with the other two shades. So I did add in all three shades, even though that area is super tiny. You don't have to be extra like I am. You could just use the E59 and the E57 probably, and it would look just fine. But I always like to squeeze in a little extra highlight when I can to really make those shadows pop. I think it just makes your coloring so much more dynamic. So I did that for all four of these guys, coloring in the antlers just the same. Like I said, I wanted them to be a little crew, you know, Santa's crew there. We're missing Rudolph. I thought about doing one with a red nose, but I ended up leaving them all black with the stamped ink like they originally were intended to be. So I'm moving on to some of my accessory images now, and I wanted to have a really vibrant pop of turquoise. So I brought in BG05, BG07, and BG09. My BG07 is a little dried out, so I'm going to need to refill that marker and change out the tip. So I just decided to skip over it. So I pulled in BG02 instead. So I'm skipping right from the BG09 to the BG05 and then using the BG02 for the highlight. And I'm just going to hop around here and color in different gifts and ribbons. I wanted to have a couple different little pops of color on this card, and turquoise I thought would be fun for Christmas. It's really not a traditional Christmas color, but I always like to mix something non-traditional into my Christmas palette. I just think it's gives the viewer a little bit of a surprise, something that they weren't quite expecting maybe. So I'm just going to hop around, like I said, and color in some of the gifts and sometimes the ribbon, and just always adding that BG09 down at the bottom, blending up toward the top where the light is coming from with the BG05, and then adding in that highlight with the BG02. If you wanted to go a bit more traditional, you could swap out the turquoise for a nice rich dark green. I think that would be cool as well. But I thought these turquoises would really look nice with the frosty scene that I'm going to be creating later on. This is going to be an outdoor scene and it's going to be snowy. And I think that turquoise really just intensifies that frosty look. I will go more traditional when it comes to the next combo though. Have to go with a nice bright red. So I'm using R24, R29, and R39. This has become my favorite red combo. That R39 really adds a lot of depth, and then that R29 is just such a bright, perfect red, and the R24 has the tiniest bit of a coral color to it. So it really makes the combo glow, and I just love it. I use it for so many things, but especially around the holidays. My old favorite used to be R29, R39, and R59, but once I started adding in that R24, I just really, really loved that bright, almost warm, rich red in that center or in the highlight area. So I definitely switched over to this being my favorite, and yeah, I don't think I'll ever go back. I just really, really love it. Although if I were coloring something larger that needed 4 shades in order to really pop, I would bring in that R59 to create an even deeper shadow. So I'm just hopping around again. I gave the little reindeer the red accessories to match, all except for the one with the jingle bells, since he didn't have a hat or a scarf or a bandana to color. And then I'm just moving around to color in more of the gifts and the ribbons with this red combo to bring in that traditional Christmas red that everyone expects on a holiday card. I'm also going to color the sleigh in red, and I'm putting that shadow up under that lip since it is so wide. I figured that would cast a shadow. So I added that R39 there and then down both sides. And then I'm blending that out with the R29, making sure to catch the edge of that R39 and pull it into the mid-tone so that I get a smooth blend. And then I do the same thing with the R24, and I also like to color in little circular motions when I'm really trying to get the colors to blend nicely so that it kind of just breaks up any lines that might be left behind. And then I'm just going to finish up with a few extra of the gifts and ribbons that are in the sleigh. 2 of them are just the ribbons, and then one has like a striped gift, so I just did every other stripe with that red combo. And then I'm going to move on to the whites, and normally I color whites with either gray tones or like a pale aqua, but I decided to mix it up today and go with these very pale grayish shades, the E40s. I'm using E40, E41, and E43, and my E43 is a little bit overfilled. I just recently refilled a lot of my markers, and ever since that one has been a little bit leaky, so I just pulled off the other cap to equalize the pressure in the barrel, and that usually fixes it, so I had no more issues whatsoever of that trying to leak out. As I sometimes do. If I don't take off the cap, I usually regret it, so it's just an easy fix. So I'm laying a little bit of that down in the shadows, blending out with the E41, and then using the E40, and again letting that fade into the white for some extra highlight. And I really like how that looked for all of the whites. It made them look really rich and warm and cozy, almost like it was made of wool or something like that, especially on the brim of the Santa hat and the top edge of the sleigh. But I just think it is a little bit different from what I usually do, and I always like to challenge myself and try new things with my Copic coloring or my card making in general. So I did color in a few extra of the gifts and some of the ribbons, and then I am going to switch to some golden yellows so that I can do my jingle bells. I'm using Y13, YR21, and YR23. The YR23 and the YR21 are definitely more desaturated. They're going to lend it that really golden color, and then the Y13 is much more bright and vibrant, so it'll just really make that combo pop. And I realized as I was coloring in those jingle bells that I missed that little reindeer's other hand, which was kind of hidden behind that string of bells. So I will have to go back and color that in later, but I just did that off screen. I'm also going to color in the bottom of the sleigh with this combo. I just thought it would be nice to have that gold accent there and have that color pop in another place on the card. And I will also color in the last couple of gifts and ribbons. There's not that many left, but I just thought I would incorporate that color again in little pops throughout, so it would be spread throughout the scene. That really helps to draw the viewer's eye through your scene if you have unifying colors here and there. So that's just something that I like to do to try to make my cards feel a little bit more cohesive and planned out. So I'm just going to finish up these last couple of gifts, and I'll come back to them later at the end of the video and add some extra details in there, add some patterns to some of them. But for now, I am going to grab a black Sakura Jelly Roll pen, get that going off to the side so it's flowing nicely, and go over the eyes of my reindeer that are open to make them bright and shiny, and then I will trim these images out with their matching dies. For my background, I'm going to be using the Mama Elephant Slim Woodland die and die cutting that out of some Bristol smooth surface cardstock. I popped out the sky and then all of the little sky slivers that went between the trees, and I laid them out on my mat in the same order that I popped them out of the die so that I know exactly which ones go back between which trees when I finish up. And I'm going to blend on some Distress Oxide inks, starting with some tumbled glass. And for the slivers, I'm kind of just pouncing the tool on them. They're so tiny that it's really easy for them to get bent up if you try to just blend over them. So I found that just pouncing that ink over top is the best solution for those tiny slivers anyway. And then I added that color down at the bottom of my sky, but then I ended up changing my mind when I brought in my second shade, which is Salvage Patina. I decided I wanted that color down at the bottom so it would really be more of a contrast against the white of the snow and the little bit of a frosty glow that I was going to add to the snow. So I put the Salvage Patina down at the bottom right over top of the tumbled glass. Since the tumbled glass is super pale, it's totally fine. And then I use the tumbled glass at the top of that instead. And I'm just going to work my way back and forth between these two ink blending tools. I want to create a nice blend, and I also want to create a little bit more intensity. So I'm going to add more ink to that until it reaches the saturation level that I really want to have. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to bring in my snowy scene, and I want to add a little frosty glow to those snowdrifts like I mentioned. So I'm just being really careful with that tool, trying to use the edge of it so I only get that ink right at the top edge where that stitching detail is, which is the only place that I want it to be. And then for the bottom hill, since it opens up, I'm going to use a scrap piece of cardstock to just tuck under there to make sure that I don't get that ink on the white of the snowdrift above it. So I'm just kind of sliding that across as I blend to keep that bottom edge of the top snowdrift clean. Then I'll take a little extra of that tumbled glass and just add it to the top edge and the corners of that scene to just really emphasize that frosty feel. And then I'm going to bring in some gathered twigs and a little finger dauber to do the trees. And I'm sorry, my video shut off there and I didn't realize it. My camera shuts off automatically every 10 minutes, and I didn't quite catch it, but I just blended that over the trees with that finger dauber. And then I cut out a white piece of cardstock to be just slightly smaller than the Slim Woodland die, so that I could have some white snow behind my sky, and also just have a place to assemble everything and make sure all those little pieces that go between the trees end up where they should be and are nice and secure. So I'm just adding my glue between all of those little holes, which I popped out with a little craft pick, and then I can nestle that sky right in between those trees where it goes, just like a puzzle piece. And then I'll bring in the smaller little bits that I have up there still on my mat in the order that I placed them, so I know exactly where they fit back in. So I'm just going to add a little bit of glue directly to that white panel behind the die, and then slip those into place. Super quick and easy to do it this way. So I'll do the right side just the same as I did the left, making sure that everything just locks into place in those little sections. And since everything was die cut from the same piece of cardstock, they really fit back together really easily. Then I'm going to pop this piece into my MISTI so that I can stamp my sentiment. And I'm going to do that using VersaFine Onyx Black ink. And I'm using the sentiment that says, "Oh dear, Christmas is here." I think that's such a cute and punny sentiment. And I will stamp that down twice to make sure that I get a nice bold impression. And then I'm going to set that aside to dry. And in the meantime, I'll pop my card base in my MISTI. I created that using MFT snow cone cardstock. And I'm going to stamp that other reindeer and also the additional sentiment in this set that says "Jingle All the Way" using Lawn Fawn Peacock ink. And again, I stamped that down a couple of times to make sure it was nice and bold. This ink does dry back a little bit, so I wanted to make sure it stood out even after the fact. And there you can see what that's looking like. And now I am ready to assemble everything. So I will take that focal panel and adhere that to cover the entire card front, just making sure that those corners line up nice and straight. And then I can bring in my images. And I always like to start with my largest image first because it's going to take up the most space, so I can build my scene around it. So for this card, this is going to be the sleigh. So I'm adding some liquid glue to the back of that. I'm using Barely Art Precision Craft Glue. It's my favorite glue because it has that fine detailed tip, so it gets in all those little nooks and crannies. And then I'll just add that sleigh over toward the right hand side. And then back behind that on the top hill, I'm going to add this little reindeer that is carrying gifts toward the sleigh. I'll have another one that is going to be tucked back behind the sleigh, but before I glue that down, I just wanted to figure out my spacing with my remaining reindeer. So I laid those all out so I could really visually see how the card was going to come together. And then I could go ahead and glue those into place, especially since some of them are going to be just slightly behind some of the others, like this image here with the reindeer and his jingle bells. His little bells are going to trail off behind the reindeer that is holding the gift, so I wanted to secure him in place first and then add this little guy over top. And this little guy is actually going to just slightly overlap the reindeer in the center with the two gifts balanced between his hands. So I added him last as well. And then I've got these three little gifts that I want to use to fill out the rest of my scene. I'm going to add the turquoise one over on the far left, right under that tree. And then the other two gifts I'm going to kind of stagger so that they're stacked together in the snow to kind of balance out the weight of the sentiment that is over on the left. I'm really big on balance on my scenes. So now it's time to start adding in those details, and I'm grabbing a white Sakura jelly roll pen this time, and I'm just adding some little stripes or polka dots or even like a plaid pattern to some of the gifts and some of the ribbons, just to give them some extra interest and really make them look like gift wrap. And this is an extra step that you absolutely do not have to do, but I always think it's nice to just add a little extra interest to the card. And once again, it's something that the recipient might not be expecting, so it's just another little delight for the eyes, I think. So I'm going to add another little stripe pattern to the gift that is in the reindeer's hands, and then that turquoise gift on the far left, I'm going to do a plaid pattern just by doing wide stripes going one direction and then turning my pen and going up the other direction, and that gives you a nice wide plaid pattern, which still lets the coloring show through. So I also wanted to add a little bit of glitter. I almost always add glitter to my cards, and especially my holiday cards. So I'm grabbing my favorite Stardust Stickles and adding that to the white rim on the sleigh and also the white of the Santa hat. And then I just kind of hopped around and added it to some more of the gifts or the ribbons. I didn't do any of the ribbons that are on the same gift, like not the whole entire thing. I kind of picked one or the other, either the ribbon or the gift, just so it didn't get too overwhelming. And also I didn't go over any of the white gel pen because the liquid in the stickles will make your gel pen kind of smear. So I just avoided that, but now you can see all of that sparkle and detail up close. And I'll give you another peek at the inside as well. I love that little guy. He's so cute. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, please hit that like button and leave me a comment down below to let me know. Also, let me know if you are ready for the holiday card making or if you're not quite there yet. Either way, I totally get it. All of the products I used will be listed and linked for you in the description bar below. And if you'd like to keep watching, here is day 1 of the previous 2 years of holiday card series. You can click on either one to check them out. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I hope you had a good one, and I'll see you soon with another video. Bye-bye.